For nearly 20 years on Gunsmoke, viewers watched Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty circle each other with a tension so thick it felt inevitable. They shared looks, silences, and moments that said everything, yet somehow, never the one thing fans waited for. No kiss, no confession, no official ending. So why did television's most famous almost couple never cross that line? Decades later, the answer came straight from James Arness himself, and it's not what most fans expect. What he revealed about intention, restraint, and the power of not giving the audience what it wants changes the way we see Gunsmoke forever. Everyone wanted Matt and Miss Kitty to kiss. When Amanda Blake was cast in Gunsmoke, she was still in her mid-20s, and she had fought hard for the role. Landing the part of Miss Kitty was no accident. Blake knew exactly what she wanted, and she was deeply grateful for the chance to stand opposite James Arness, whose towering presence as Marshal Matt Dillon would soon define television's idea of the Western hero. From the beginning, their pairing carried weight, chemistry, and something quietly electric. The series itself began as a radio drama, with William Conrad and Georgia Ellis voicing Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. While their voices were iconic, television producers knew the screen demanded more. Faces that could hold a close-up and spark imagination. Amanda Blake delivered exactly that. As the owner of Dodge City's saloon, Miss Kitty was strong, feminine, sharp-witted, and emotionally layered. When Gunsmoke transitioned from black and white to color in 1966, Blake's presence only became more striking, and her chemistry with Arness more undeniable. Gunsmoke premiered in 1955 and ran for an astonishing 20 seasons, ending in 1975. Arness remained for the entire run, while Blake stepped away during the 19th season. And yet, across nearly 2 decades, the writers never fully defined what Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty were to each other. They shared longing glances, unspoken loyalty, and moments charged with meaning, but no confirmation, no resolution, no kiss that fans could point to as proof. That ambiguity was deliberate. From the earliest episodes to Miss Kitty's final appearance, the show carefully skirted the truth of their bond. Viewers sensed it instantly, something deeper than friendship. The producers wanted to keep the relationship a tease. Given how striking Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty were on screen, it was only natural that audiences imagined the two of them together. Viewers didn't just hope for a romance, they expected one. But what unfolded on Gunsmoke was far more calculated than simple wish fulfillment. From the very beginning, the producers deliberately crafted a relationship built on suggestion rather than confirmation, keeping audiences suspended in a constant state of almost. The undeniable chemistry between James Arness and Amanda Blake did the rest of the work for them. That slow burn tension became one of the show's defining features. So much so that, until her death in 1989, Amanda Blake said the single most common question fans asked her was whether there was ever an episode where Miss Kitty and Matt Dillon kissed. With more than 600 episodes produced over 2 decades, even devoted viewers wondered if they might have missed something, a brief moment, a forgotten scene, a hidden confirmation tucked away in the series' long run. But the answer was always the same. There was no such episode. Not one. Across all those years and hundreds of stories, Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty never kissed on screen. And that wasn't an oversight, it was a conscious, creative decision. The writers and producers had several reasons for withholding that moment fans craved most. The most important was narrative control. Once the show openly defined the relationship, the mystery would vanish. The tension that kept viewers emotionally invested week after week would disappear, forcing the creators to invent an entirely new hook to keep audiences engaged. Even more complicated was what that revelation would mean for Matt Dillon himself. The writers struggled with how to portray a frontier lawman in a fully realized romantic relationship without softening the solitary, stoic image that had made him iconic. So instead of resolution, Gunsmoke chose restraint. The longing looks, the quiet loyalty, the emotional intimacy without physical confirmation, all of it kept the question alive. Gunsmoke often hinted at the truth of the relationship. Although the television series never openly spelled out the true nature of the bond between Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty, the people behind Gunsmoke eventually lifted the curtain once the show was over. After the cameras stopped rolling, members of the creative team admitted that what audiences had sensed for years was no illusion at all. In their minds, Matt and Kitty were lovers, just not in any way television of the time was willing to show. Their relationship, as the writers envisioned it, was intentionally unconventional. Matt Dillon was the Marshal of Dodge City, a man surrounded by danger, grudges, and enemies who would have gladly used Miss Kitty as leverage. To protect her, he chose distance and silence over public affection. Love, in this case, existed in restraint. It was private, unspoken, and carefully hidden behind duty. Matt's refusal to define the relationship wasn't a lack of feeling. It was an act of protection. Once that perspective is understood, the series begins to look very different. Scenes that once felt ambiguous suddenly read as deliberate signals. The lingering looks, the way Kitty seemed to know Matt's thoughts before he spoke, the quiet, emotional intimacy they shared when no one else was around. It all points to a relationship operating just beneath the surface. The show never needed a kiss to confirm it. The subtext did all the work. That subtext came closest to breaking into open truth during Amanda Blake's final season on the show. In one pivotal episode, Miss Kitty all but forced the issue. Her character made it clear that living in emotional limbo was no longer enough. She confronted Matt with what amounted to an ultimatum. Either he acknowledged their relationship openly, or she would walk away. It was the most direct the series ever came to naming what they were to each other. Miss Kitty gave Matt an ultimatum in season 19. Across Gunsmoke's remarkable 635 episodes, Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty never shared a kiss, but their connection was unmistakable. The chemistry between James Arness and Amanda Blake crackled in quieter ways. Lingering looks, familiar touches, and physical closeness that stopped just short of crossing a line. To casual viewers, they might have seemed like unusually close friends. To devoted fans, the truth felt obvious. They were lovers who lived in the shadows. That interpretation wasn't based on wishful thinking alone. Over the show's 20 seasons, the writers repeatedly placed Matt and Kitty in situations that exposed the depth of their bond without naming it. Time and again, romantic rivals appeared, men interested in Kitty, women drawn to Matt, and each time the reaction from the other was immediate and intense. Jealousy surfaced, concern sharpened, and emotions flared in ways that went far beyond friendship. The scripts never explained why they cared so deeply about each other's romantic lives, but the subtext did. The moment that pushed this unspoken relationship closest to the surface came late in the series, during season 19, in an episode titled Kitty's Love Affair. By then, Blake was nearing the end of her long run on the show, and the story carried the weight of finality. In the episode, Miss Kitty becomes involved with another man, one who ultimately proposes marriage. Faced with a future that would pull her away from Dodge City and from Matt, she takes the news directly to him. What follows is as close to a confession as Gunsmoke ever allowed. Kitty gives Matt an ultimatum: marry her, or she will leave with someone else. It is a stark, emotional moment that strips away years of restraint. Matt's response is equally revealing. He tells her that he cannot marry, whether because of his job, the danger that follows him, or the life he has chosen. He makes it clear that a conventional future together is impossible. The exchange lays bare what the series had long implied. The love is real, but the circumstances make it unsustainable. And yet even then, Gunsmoke refuses to deliver a clean resolution. Miss Kitty does not marry the other man. She does not leave Dodge City. Instead, life resumes as it always has, quietly, unresolved, heavy with things left unsaid. The season continues as though nothing definitive has changed, and before the 20th season begins, Amanda Blake is written out of the series entirely. Why was Amanda Blake fired from Gunsmoke? The end of Amanda Blake's long run on Gunsmoke did not come from scandal, illness, or fading popularity, but from a dispute that seemed surprisingly small on the surface and enormous in consequence. By the early 1970s, Gunsmoke was no longer the ratings juggernaut it had once been. After nearly 2 decades on the air, budgets were tighter, and producers were increasingly reluctant to spend money they felt was unnecessary. One of the corners they chose to cut was wardrobe. For several seasons, the character of Miss Kitty appeared in essentially the same clothing, recycled and reused without much variation. To Amanda Blake, this wasn't a minor issue, it went to the heart of the character. Miss Kitty was written as a successful, sophisticated saloon proprietor, a woman who took pride in her appearance and status in Dodge City. Blake felt that dressing her in the same aging outfits year after year undercut that identity and made the character feel stale and implausible. As an actress who had embodied Miss Kitty since 1955, she believed she was protecting the integrity of the role. Eventually, Blake drew a line. She informed the producers that she would not continue playing Miss Kitty unless the character received a refreshed wardrobe that reflected who she was supposed to be. It was a stand rooted in professionalism and character logic, but it backfired. Rather than compromise, the producers chose to let her go. After 19 seasons as the show's leading female presence, Amanda Blake was fired. The decision would haunt the show almost immediately. One of the producers later admitted that dismissing Blake was a grave mistake, one he came to regret deeply. Without her, Gunsmoke lost something essential. The quiet, unspoken chemistry between Blake and James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon, had been one of the series' emotional anchors for nearly 20 years. Take Miss Kitty out of Dodge City, and Matt Dillon felt incomplete. Audience reaction reflected that loss. Viewers had invested in the subtle, secret bond between Matt and Kitty for decades, and seeing the Marshal without his counterpart felt wrong, like a love story interrupted mid-sentence. The show limped forward briefly, but the magic was gone. Not long after Blake's departure, Gunsmoke officially declared its 20th season to be its last. James and Amanda did kiss elsewhere on television. Although James Arness and Amanda Blake never kissed on Gunsmoke itself, fans might be surprised to learn that the two actors did share a kiss elsewhere on television. The moment didn't happen in Dodge City or within the show's storyline, but during a commercial break in the early years of the series. In its first seasons, Gunsmoke was sponsored by the tobacco company L&M, which was common practice at the time. Sponsors often produced custom commercials featuring the stars of the shows they supported. In one such ad, Amanda Blake approaches James Arness, hands him a full carton of L&M cigarettes, and kisses him on the cheek. Arness then turns directly to the camera and jokingly declares that this is his favorite way to receive his cigarettes. It was playful, brief, and for many fans, unforgettable. Though the two weren't in character as Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty in the commercial, that fleeting kiss remains the closest viewers ever came to seeing the iconic pair share a moment of physical affection. For audiences who waited 20 years for a Gunsmoke kiss that never came, the ad has become a small but fascinating piece of television history. Not long before Blake's death in 1989, she and Arness reunited one last time as their beloved characters in the made-for-TV film Gunsmoke, Return to Dodge. Several additional television movies followed after Blake's passing, with Arness continuing alone as Matt Dillon. While Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty never married on screen, the actors who played them both lived full, complicated personal lives. Arness married more than once and met his second wife through a blind date arranged by Gunsmoke's makeup artist. They married in 1978 and remained together until his death in 2011. Blake, on the other hand, was married 4 times, none of which lasted, and she died alone in 1989 after complications related to AIDS. James Arness revealed why Marshall Matt Dillon and Kitty never got together. Over the years, James Arness eventually offered his own explanation for why Kitty and Matt Dillon never truly crossed that final line. In James Arness, an autobiography, he made it clear that he understood fans' long-standing frustration. As he put it, "Over the years, fans have often asked me about my character Matt Dillon's relationship with Kitty, and why it never seemed to progress beyond the air of the romantic between us." According to Arness, the answer wasn't personal, it was creative. The decision, he explained, came directly from the producers of Gunsmoke. "That was the producer's decision," he wrote, "since going a step further would complicate matters and might even lessen the show's popularity. Making the relationship official would have changed the balance of the series, and the producers believed the risk outweighed the reward." Looking back, Arness suggested that the restraint may actually have worked in the audience's favor, even if viewers didn't realize it at the time. "Our relationship was downplayed because they thought it was more titillating to leave matters to the viewer's imagination," he explained. "The romance thrived in implication rather than confirmation, sustained by tension and possibility instead of resolution." Arness also took care to separate the characters from the real-life dynamic behind the scenes. While the love story between Matt and Kitty remained unspoken on screen, there was genuine affection and respect between him and Amanda Blake, off-camera. He praised her casting as Miss Kitty Russell, calling it an example of the superb casting that made the program such a success. He went on to describe Blake simply and warmly as a wonderful actress and a great friend. "Now we'd love to hear from you. Did you know that the producers of Gunsmoke always intended Marshall Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty to be secret lovers, and that there was even a commercial early in the show's run where the actors who played them actually shared a kiss? Let us know what surprised you most in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.